Hi guys, welcome back to Rampant Lion Reviews once again. Joined for this one by my good friend Thomas Hoendam from Thomas Opent Beer Reviews. So as always, you'll find the link to his channel in the video description below. Make sure you go down there, subscribe to him. Lots of nice Dutch beer reviews and quite a few English ones appearing regularly as well. So I highly recommend that you go and check them out. We've had some real fun recording some different reviews together.
Yeah, we have. We've had a lot of fun this weekend.
Oh yeah.
Some great beers.
Some off-camera fun.
Oh,
yeah. Yes. But yeah, for this one, we have a beer that I think will be very, very cool. Yeah. So this one comes to you from Rock City Brewing, who are in Amersfoort, kind of to the northeast of Utrecht, southern Netherlands.
Yeah.
I don't know what the name of the region is. Is that...
Just the province of Utrecht, I think.
Just the province of Utrecht. Okay, province of Utrecht. But this one is called the Koffiebeuker.
Koffiebeuker. Basically, it's the coffee rammer.
Koffiebeuker, the coffee rammer. Yeah. So yeah, this one comes in at 10% ABV. It's an imperial coffee stout, and you might recognise the sexy beast on the side of this.
And it's actually the sexy beast that gave us this beer.
Yes, it is the sexy beast that gave us this beer. So this is Remy den Doop from Beer Geek Holland. Yeah. So yeah, the most established beer tuber, I guess.
Absolutely.
In the Netherlands.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So Remy is like the OG.
Mostly O.
Mostly O. Okay.
Old.
That's a bit mean, but he's a sexy beast. We have come to the firm conclusion with Remy that the whole COVID thing is his fault, because he shaved his beard and then this whole thing just kicked off.
Truly. So
you know we're only putting two and two together and making four. This is just the logical thing. But can you tell the story?
Yeah, I was about to say, because how about I translate this? Because there's at one point about a year and a half ago, for a good cause, for a project that helps fight ALS. The Dutch beer geek community, together with like almost 60 breweries, brewed this big collab beer. And while we were there for the review, the release party, Remy made this comment that says "Koffie mensen," basically translate like "coffee people." Come on, people, it's coffee. So much coffee in that beer, and that became a ongoing phrase in the Dutch beer community. When as soon as a beer has a lot of coffee, people would say "Koffie mensen." So Rock City decided to do a tribute to Remy by making this Koffiebeuker, and in honor of Remy den Doop's beer reviews on his Beer Geek Holland YouTube channel, this blubberdikke jetser, and blubberdikke jetsers basically are
big
when they're big, basically, but it became a term for huge, big imperial stouts. It's a big, bold, rich, full, creamy, thick beer with a whole shebang of malts and grains. It's been lagered on Rock City roast coffee. Koffie mensen. So when we go to the entire ingredient list, we've got brew water, which is just water, but with special stuff, brew water. I get it. Barley malts, and the malts are pale malt, roasted and peeled barley, special B and pale crystal. We've got oats, malted oats and naked oats. We've got both. And wheat malt. The sugars are cane sugar and dark candied sugar. And the hops are tomahawk. So just tomahawk. I'm guessing only in the boil. I doubt they add anything later.
I wouldn't think so,
no. And the yeast is the US 05.
Oh, it's a classic one, that.
Yeah, so this is basically yeast and hop basically do what they're supposed to do. Bittering and fermentation. They're not going to really impart any flavour. It's all about the malts, the coffee. That's what's supposed to do its thing here. I mean, tomahawk might do one or two little things, but mostly it's there for, you know, the bittering portion of the show.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
So there you go. Remy actually sent us this beer, and I was talking to him. He's like, "Are you cool if we review this on James's channel, not mine? Because it could be kind of fun, because James is a lot more international than I am." And he was like, "Wow, yeah, please do." So Rock City is going to get a bit more of an international spotlight. And of course, not just my channel will have a link. I'm forcing this on James right now. It's not the only thing that was forced on him this weekend. A link to my channel will be there, but also a link to, of course, Beer Geek Holland.
It will be, yes.
There
we'll
we
put
go.
that down there, exactly. So yeah, beer. This is the Remy Sexy Beast beer. That's how I'm going to call for it, because Koffiebeuker, I'm not really going to be able to pronounce that very well. But yeah, this will be awesome then. So just, plain black bottle cap on this one. Where's the camera on this one?
It's actually easy for you.
Yeah.
Do you say
Koffiebeuker.
Yeah.
Yeah, then there's Remy, the big sexy beast. He's lucky he's not here this weekend.
That's a general pose with his arms well in review when he's drinking a glass. That's his
we would make his wife very jealous if he was here this weekend. But yeah, different story. But yeah, let's crack this one then. Let's go for it.
Yeah, go for it. You want to start, while I pour this, do you want to say a thing or two about Rock City?
So Rock City, as far as I can find, just took a few notes. Founded back in 2014. As I said earlier, they're based in Amersfoort, which is to the northeast of Utrecht. And the two main men behind the brew are Koen Overeem and Wiebe Groeneveld, if I'm pronouncing that right. I think that literally means green field, if I'm getting the word.
Groeneveld, yeah,
Groeneveld, that's like green field.
Wow.
Yeah, so we can
Would
make...
you look at that for just 2 seconds?
Ooh, damn.
That is a huge head on that.
Interesting. Okay. But yeah, this brewery is basically a brew pub, and the two founders had a bit of experience in the restaurant industry, and they decided that they wanted to make beers as well, and so there they are. And as of October 2020, the 18th of October to be specific, they have produced 128 different beers according to Untappd. So for 6 years, that works out at about, just over 20 beers a year. That's not bad.
They've got that core range, but they do a lot of one-offs. They were actually, I believe, they were the first brewery in the Netherlands to participate in the Altogether project. It was a great beer, by the way. You can find that review on my channel. I really dug their version of Altogether.
See, I'm wondering if I've maybe come across Rock City before and thought it was an American brewery, so I haven't really gone for it.
Because
Because
on tap to them,
it might. No, I don't think I've drunk it.
Yeah.
I think I've seen them and then thought from the name that they were American, and then because whenever I go into the bottle shops in Copenhagen and stuff, I'm always a bit, unless it's certain ones. I'm always a bit wary of the American stuff because you don't know how fresh it's going to be, so I tend to go for the darker beers.
Especially with the pale ales and the IPAs.
Yeah, and probably if I've seen the name Rock City, which is quite an English name if you like, I've probably left it alone because I didn't think it was...
They want to be a little bit of like that American tradition, that thing where you got the brew pub and everything.
Yeah, because if it had a slightly different name, I probably would have been like, oh, that's interesting, sort of thing. So yeah.
So on the pouring of the show here, it actually poured quite light, and in terms of body, it didn't pour very thick. It poured a bit lighter, a bit thinner, and it really had a dark brown colour to it. Not so much black as what you expect when you think of both coffee and stout. First thing you have in your head is like the boldest of black you can think. And I have to say, in the glass, the way it jiggles around a little bit in their head, it reminds me more of a porter than a stout, actually.
Porter or a black IPA or something like that, yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily need to be a bad thing, just, I'm saying.
Yeah, and the thing I noticed when I had a little whiff of it, it does actually smell a little bit like a black IPA. But yeah, you could see this beer when we poured it, solid couple of fingers ahead there.
Dissipated a little bit.
It's dissipated now, but I would call that a kind of light, kind of mocha head, maybe?
It is slightly mocha, a bit khaki. Where's my khaki?
Khaki.
I can't find my khaki.
Yeah. One or two big bubbles in the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. But yeah, I think that's all we need to say about the appearance. It's kind of what you'd expect from an Imperial Stout. But like Thomas said, not the thickest of Imperial Stouts. So yeah, let's have a look at the aroma and see how we do with this.
Let's go.
Ooh.
So there's coffee in there for sure. I think this is about 3 months old now, maybe nearing 4.
I would smell this and think it's a black IPA.
That for some reason this reminds me of a Cascadian Ale.
Yeah.
We were talking about the hop portion of the show is not going to do much, but this is quite hoppy.
There's a beer that this really reminds me of. There is a beer from, I forget the beer. I forget if it's Pivo. No, it's not Pivo. It's brain's not working. It's the Panimo Ravintola Plevnan, and it's the Plevnan Siperia, which is a Finnish brewery, and they list it as an Imperial Stout, but it's really like it's like a heavily hop stout. It really is more like an Imperial Black IPA. It really is more like that.
It does, doesn't it?
This beer really smells, but this beer really reminds me of that beer from Finland, and I had that years ago, like 2016, but it's one that's always stuck in my mind.
But before we go into that big part of like, is it hoppy, yes or no? I mean, it's a coffee bean, right? And a coffee bean can have a lot of those sort of hoppy qualities where it can be a bit oily. It can have that sort of green note, some berry notes. Some hops can have, like a coffee bean can have that berry fruity note, the red fruit. So a coffee bean can have, depending on how fresh that bean was, how it was roasted, all those things I'm not saying it's going to impart a hoppy flavour, but the nose can lead you to think there's some hoppy notes going on more than just that Tomahawk.
Exactly. I mean, Tomahawk is one of your classic hops. You know, Tomahawk is comparable to brain's not working, to Columbus. You know, you get the CTZ hop mix, the Columbus, Tomahawk, Zeus. These are the kind of 3 classic bittering hops. And like Thomas was saying, coffee beans, I find these to be the most interesting adjunct you can put in beer, because you get coffee beans that are grown all across the world, Africa, South America, wherever. And it's all about the meters above sea level. They call it the mazo. So the higher the altitude you grow the coffee at, the more likely you are to get aromatics, citrus and floral kind of characters.
It's very interesting that for you as a non-coffee drinker, you know all of this, but that's probably because of the beer stuff. Because people forget that coffee isn't just coffee. It's one of the most versatile.
Yes, like one of the most versatile things. It's
beans in terms of flavour.
It's as versatile as hops. I would say that coffee is as versatile as hops. So I mean, let's take a minute. When it comes to coffee stouts, I like to take a little minute and just focus on the coffee bean.
Please, yes.
And then so let's do that. So the coffee bean that you get out of this, for me, is very aromatic.
It is.
I think there's a good bit of a plummy note to it.
Absolutely.
It's got a good bit of red fruit.
Bit of that cherry, strawberry, red fruit, that plummy, that entire...
Cherries is a good one, yeah.
And especially what I get is that astringent red berry thing going on.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, the coffee in this is it's lovely kind of cherries, plummy kind of notes out of it. It's got it's got a lot of aromaticity to it. It's almost got a little bit of a kind of menthol-y type thing, I think, as well.
I've been getting a sort of a green note there, and I see what you mean with that menthol, sort of like a green freshness. And coffee beans, depending again on how were they roasted, how long were they stored, all of that stuff, how were they grown, where were they grown, the entire situation, you can have this sort of green freshness.
Oh yeah,
in a coffee bean, and this has
it definitely
that mentholy green. It's not menthol as in I just had chewing gum menthol. But that green freshness.
Yeah, it really has a bit of that to it, this one. So yeah, you get a lot of that out of this beer. For me, the roast is very smooth as well. Yeah. I think the roast almost the kind of earthy, roasty notes really take a back seat.
This isn't a heavily roasted espresso bean. This is for a mild, lovely, chilled, have it in the late morning coffee that just gives you a bit of a caffeine kick, and it's just mild and inviting and chill.
Definitely, I would agree with that. But let's just say the coffee side of this beer. Right, let's ignore the coffee now and focus on the rest of the malt base.
Well, the malt base, I wanted to notice something just very quickly. I know it's not your usual style, but just very quickly. Other than that, what I'm really getting is a lot of that cane sugar and that dark candied sugar that they're using. Yeah,
you can definitely get a little bit of that sort of brown sugary.
Absolutely.
It's almost like Demerara sugar a little bit.
Yes, that's cane sugar. Sorry, cane sugar. I said cane sugar. I think that the
that's
translation
what it said on the bottle.
rietsuiker. I think Demerara sugar is actually the proper translation, not cane sugar.
Because Demerara is a specific type of sugar, I think.
Oh, is it cane?
Cane sugar? I don't know. It could be. I don't know.
Cane sugar.
I'm not an expert in sugars, but it's a nice brown sugar.
Both are brown sugars, and they do it. That is so obvious here.
Yeah. So you've got a lot. Yeah, I can agree with that. You've got a lovely brown sugary note. What you're also going to notice about this, I think that this beer has a little bit of that Czech Tmavy kind of thing going on. I would not be surprised. Did you say there was Carafa in this, or was it Special B? It was Special B, I think, wasn't it?
Let me go. It has again pale malt, roasted and peeled barley, Special B, and pale crystal.
Okay.
And don't forget the malt oats and the naked oats.
Right. Well,
with wheat malt.
I would say that probably the crystal is contributing a bit to the sweetness in this one. Crystal's probably contributing a little bit to the sweetness in this beer for me. But yeah, I actually would. I think I've made this mistake in a few videos before where I get that nice bready thing, and I think Czech Tmavy.
I've never had a Czech Tmavy.
Czech Tmavy is basically, it's like a German Schwarzbier, but it's a lot smoother and a lot more bready. It's a lot. The Czech lagers are a lot more kind of bready and smooth, and I get that vibe out of this one. It's like a really well-fired bread crust with a bit of brown German rye bread on top of it. That's what I think the backbone of this beer is. And then, like Thomas was saying, I think on top of that, in the middle of the nose, that's when you get the brown sugars, and it feels like the coffee is kind of infused all the way through that. I think I would say that about it. There's one or two little woody, nutty undertones, I think.
There's this slight sort of wet wood, nutty note going on. I think what would have a lot of people put off by this is when they think of a coffee stout, they kind of think that heavy roasted bitterness espresso bean. And that's not what this is. So I can see how many people would get a little bit confused with this beer.
Yeah.
And think like, this is not what I think of a coffee stout. But for me, this is quite, well, I wouldn't say quintessential, but very representative of what a coffee stout can be, depending on the coffee.
Yeah. Well, I think we've covered the malty side and the adjuncty side of this beer. So hoppy wise, I definitely get a good bit. I can smell the tomahawk in this.
I don't know.
There's a big tomahawk's got that big bright floral note to it. It comes across as a bit smoother, I think, and a bit more aromatic in dark malt based beers than it does in the IPAs and things. Because in the IPAs it's got a bit more spice to it, whereas your nose is a bit more saturated with the sweetness when it comes to these. But yeah, I get a lot. It's got that nice big floral note from Tomahawk in it. There's a lot of kind of blackcurranty, blackberry notes out of this one for me. There's a lot of that in this.
I'm really now picking up on that floral note that you mentioned.
Yeah,
and coffee for me is getting a bit more of an earthy sort of baseline now.
Yeah.
So together with that, it's actually quite refreshing. It feels like you're walking outside with that sort of like a lovely meadow with all the fresh greenness, the earth, the floral notes.
And I think that the level of kind of floral aromaticity you get out of this beer from the hops, that's what makes me. That was what made me think of the Plevnan Siperia, which is one of the biggest black IPA. I mean, I would smell this beer and think this is an Imperial Black. I would think this is an Imperial Black. And the thing is, you get quite a bit of fruitiness out of this. And black IPA, that one of the iconic black IPA for me is Toil, black salts and body malts. I've never found one that's beaten that yet. Although Plevnan Siperia is a very good example as well. But the thing is with these ones, it's Tomahawk that's in this, which is not renowned for its fruits. But if you let these beers mature a little bit, which I'm guessing you have done with this one.
I got it yesterday.
You got it yesterday?
Yeah, but this was in the beer mail that Remy sent yesterday.
So it was, yeah, but
it's only like 3 or 4, it's like 3 months old or so.
So it's not that, okay.
No,
it's not that
this
old.
is really relatively fresh, 3 months.
Okay. Well, I actually would have thought this had a little bit of age on it because of the amount of red fruits you're getting, because these beers can mature a little bit like that, I think. But yeah, I really do get a good bit of blackcurranty, blackberry notes out of this, as well as the plums and the sort of cherries from the coffee.
In the meantime, I'm also getting a sort of a soft, very subtle hint of that salmiak licorice thing that you get in some of those stouts.
I can see that, yeah.
Not very heavy, that sort of licorice wood, that sweet wood, we call it zoethout, sweet wood, licorice wood, licorice root, I think it would be.
Maybe, yeah.
Do you have those sticks that taste like licorice that you can chew on? That's
candy. We just usually eat licorice straight in Sweden, kind of straight in.
Yeah, we have the licorice candies, but we also have that woody stick that we call it zoethout. It has that. I should get you some of that next time. Anyway, it has a bit of that salmiak thingy going on a little bit in the background, not very intense, but it's a little bit.
It's a nice smelling beer anyway. I think we should get stuck into this.
Absolutely. Yeah. Remy, thank you so much, buddy.
Thank you, Remy. And yeah, guys, as I say, check out Remy from Beer Geek Holland, check out Thomas. And yeah, this is cool to have a beer from the Sexy Beast.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Prost.
Prost.
Ooh. That's very nice.
I'm really digging this. I'm also thinking, this is so much black IPA. This is still, so floral, and all those red fruits, and that.
Hell, I really think I would. Yeah, again, I would say that if I blind tasted this, I would think black IPA.
Absolutely.
I would say black IPA on this. And that's the thing, is a black IPA is basically a stout malt base with IPA level hopping.
It is. I'm getting a lot more of that salmiak licorice thing in the flavour, by the way, than I was in the mouth, than I was in the nose.
Yeah.
But still, very, very. I know it's not aggressively hopped. It's just a tomahawk. But the coffee bean that they chose just gives it such a hoppy quality. It's quite intriguing.
The other thing is, I mean, if it's only 3 or 4 weeks, did you say 3 or 4 weeks?
No, months. Give or take.
This kind of shows you can imagine what this beer would have been like fresh then.
I think it would have this insanely raw quality to it. You know what I mean? I
mean, this is one of the things that is, sometimes you can sit and debate about the styles all the time, and I
Oh, you are a master debater.
I mean, I would, I would say that this, I would really think this is a black IPA.
Yeah.
I really would. So I'd maybe have to disagree on the way that it's been marketed a little bit, and I would say an Imperial Black IPA. And if you put it in that category, I mean, either, as I say, it's me being pernickety. I would not class this as it's a coffee Imperial IPA. It's a coffee Imperial Black IPA, but it's a beautiful beer regardless. It's a beautiful beer regardless, yeah.
I could quaff a case of this without realising, just keep tasting. Not about getting drunk, but you get drunk with that 10% ABV. But
that's what
it's an incredibly intriguing beer.
I really like this. I mean,
I do.
First impression for me, very much like that checked Mavi thing. It's got that really kind of bready malt base. I mean, straight away with this beer, really roasty, well-fired bread crusty thing. That's forming your backbone of the beer. On top of that, a bit of that brown bread, like almost like the German kind of rye bread thing. And that's your special B that's going to give you that, and the crystal. The crystal is going to give you a bit more of that bready thing and the sweetness, whereas the special B is giving you the really roasty, toasty, dark thing. Nerd Brewing from Malmö, close to me, who are making their name a little bit in the Netherlands now. They love to use special
That's a
B.
good comparison, because there's a few things in here. Every time I have a Nerd Brewing stout, I get that earthy, hoppy note, together with that, what you said, that special B. And I don't know if that's a particular thing for them, because you've had more experience with them than I have had, but this does remind me of that Nerd Brewing thing.
Yeah, and it's a special B. It was the special B that does it. Just Nerd, because I thought it was Carafa originally. Carafa, trademarked malt by Weiermann in Bamberg, that has a kind of similar quality to it, and I think it's the combination of special B and crystal is very similar to Carafa that you get from Bamberg. So, like I say, for me, roasty middle third of your palate, back third of your palate, roasty toasty. Oh, pardon me. Roasty toasty. Well-fired, bread crusty backbone to this one. A little bit of that almost German rye bread type thing on top. You can feel on the back third of your palate more of the roasty notes there. You can feel a bit of smoothness from this one, from the oats that are in here. You can feel the oats are definitely smoothing out that bready quality a little bit.
I know we're not at the mouthfeel part yet, but
it's very smooth. Yeah.
Part of the mouthfeel really is very smooth, but it also has that oily slickness that some of that good coffee can have. I know you don't have a lot of experience with coffee, but it has that sort of. If you see a good cup of coffee, sometimes you have those little oil slicky things at the surface when you got this specific bean that has a little bit more oily residue in it, like certain hops. And this has that sort of oily, slick mouthfeel together with that creamy oatiness from both the malted oats and the naked oats, really imparting a lovely mouthfeel that is not too thick. This is not like a blubber dikke jetser, but it's actually, I would, if this was thicker and like some of those very heavy imperial stouts that are like 15-16% ABV and like incredibly thick mouthfeel, I might enjoy this less, because now it makes it slightly more drinkable, slightly more accessible.
Yeah,
it has the perfect mouthfeel for both its ABV and its flavour.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it really has a slickness to it, definitely. So like I say, I think the oats smoothing out that kind of brown bready quality that the beer has. Middle third of your palate, you can feel a bit of the brown sugary note in there. The coffee, we've already kind of talked about the coffee aroma and things. The coffee for me, it's got a very smooth roast to it in the flavour as well. You do get some of that aromaticity, particularly in the aftertaste, and you can feel, pardon me, a little bit of that that sort of cherry plummy note out of it. You can really feel that towards the kind of front of the palate a little bit more. I think you can really feel that just coming out of this beer very, very nicely.
And where I really appreciate that, for me, a good coffee stout isn't a good coffee stout unless it has some form of red fruit component, and it can be like a more sweeter, like a sweeter strawberry thing. It could be a bit more of a slightly soury, not sour, astringent cherry thing. It could be a very astringent red berry thing, as long as it has some form of red fruit component, and there's definitely red fruit coming through all of this, and I really enjoy that.
Yeah.
And that is the biggest thing that for me, because we talked about that black IPA part of the show here. The biggest thing that sells this to me as a coffee stout is that red fruit component from that coffee.
Yeah. No, I think that I can see. It's kind of right on that border, I think, between an Imperial Black IPA and a Stout, and I think it's the tomahawk. For me, it's the tomahawk and the sort of floral notes that push it into the black IPA
Agreed.
category. That's what I would say about this.
Would this have been more stout with a more, well, not say tomahawk isn't a subtle hop, but with a slightly different hop? Something that maybe like one of your classic noble hops.
Oh, maybe even like a Bramley's Cross from England.
Yeah,
or something.
what was the Williamette? That's what the
Williamette's that's the Williamette's American.
Yeah, but I know it's American, but the last few years haven't the British been really crazy about their Williamette? It's in stouts and porters and things.
I've not paid too much attention to that.
I thought I've seen several come across. Maybe I'm wrong, by the way. Viewers, correct me if I'm wrong with this, but I've got the impression that the UK brewers have been using a lot of Williamette in their stouts and porters lately.
It's possible. Eureka's the other one that's going to give you. Williamette and Eureka are the two big American ones for these red fruity components. The Germans have got Northern Brewer for the Doppelbock,
Right.
And Bramling's Cross, if I'm remembering. Yeah, Bramling's Cross is the one that was always popular on the barley wines, and I think Scotch ales to a degree used a bit of Bramling's Cross as well to get these red fruity components. And it's really interesting to me that you still get a little bit of that with Tomahawk. Simcoe is actually a very good hop to use. We were talking about that in another review, that Simcoe, in the dark beers like this, it's very red fruity, but in the West Coast IPAs it's far more oily, but in the New Englands it's a lot creamier and soft passion fruit you get out of it.
Which is really depending on your water treatment. When do you add it in the boil? You know, your water treatment, the chemicals that are in your water really do things with your hops. So depending on the hop you use, the water treatment that you're using, the temperatures that you added in the boil will do. Simcoe, what you just mentioned, Simcoe, that's why I'm using it as an example. Simcoe will not simply do a thing. It can do many things depending on how you use it. So yeah, it could be interesting to see what Simcoe would do in a beer like this.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I mean, yeah, back third of your palate, definitely more. There's a bit of a more roasty and toasty thing. The breadiness gets a bit thicker. But in honesty, I feel, other than a few woody undertones, I don't think there's nuttiness in this one. I find it's got a little woody touch to it underneath. If you go to the front corners of your palate, diagonally back a little bit of woodiness there. But in honesty, I feel that we've covered the malty adjuncty side of this beer quite well.
We have really do want to point out that there is actually quite a nice level of roasty toastiness to this. It's not the most heavy roasty toasted coffee stout, imperial stout I've ever had, but there is a nice amount of it.
I mean, I think that's fair, and I think it's definitely fair to say that this one is more of it's a very juicy. Very juicy and kind of aromatic, floral aromatic imperial stout, I think, in that sense. And it's the level of juiciness and the aromaticity that makes me say black IPA.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
I'm not knocking on the beer. I just wonder if they marketed it slightly.
If it was me and I tasted this, and it's not obviously you can see from the quality of this beer, this is a very capable brewery. I don't think there's a question about that. But I would call this an Imperial Coffee Black IPA.
I am very curious what Gerben will think of this, because Gerben of the Dutch Beer Collective, Gerben is our Black IPA slut. I love you, brother, but you are our Black IPA slut. And in the best ways. And I'm very curious if I'm kind of hoping, I'm going to ask him, please watch this review. Usually I wouldn't suggest that. Drink the beer before you watch a review. I kind of want him to watch this review and then see if he thinks it's a black IPA as well. Or not a black IPA per se, but leaning more towards.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. So yeah, I don't know. I'd love Herben to do this one. I think that'd be a good idea for Herben to do it in English.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah. Because then I can watch it too. But yeah, hop-wise then, back corners of the palate, a little bit earthy. As you move further forward, smoothens out a little bit, but then you get more of the floral aromaticity on the front corners of the palate. Round the front curve of the tongue, a little bit aromatic still, but a wee bit more grassy, I would say. You almost get a little bit of that mentholy freshness kind of thing.
Again, that green freshness, I agree with you on that so much.
And then front third of your palate, you get that nice oily bubble where the fruity esters roll out the beer. So towards the back of it for me, cherries, that sort of cherry-ish, plummy kind of thing. As you move further forward, I think it develops a little bit of that lighter figgy juiciness. But then on the front half of that front third of your tongue, the front sixth of your tongue, if we're being pernickety about fractions, which I should be because I used to be a maths teacher. But you get a little bit more of that oily, blackcurranty, blackberry sort of thing for me. I think that's the way I get the fruitiness of this. But you can feel a bit of that roastiness just pushing out underneath those fruity notes as you go further into the aftertaste.
Yeah.
And it starts off very sharp on the fruity notes, not puckering, but it just comes across as a little bit sharp and juicy in that front hat.
In all the good ways.
In all the good ways, yeah, definitely. The fruity notes in this beer are beautiful. I really do think so. And of course, the thing when you go further into the aftertaste, you have got that aromatic. It does. I think the coffee gets a little bit more citrusy almost in this beer.
There is a zesty. I mean, maybe it's not necessarily citrusy itself, but more that zesty thing, that that zing of that lemon zest, lime zest that you can get. It has that sort of that makes you go like, ooh, you know, it tickles the back of your head, and you're like, wow, nice.
Definitely, yeah.
I really will say that whether or not the brewer intended it to be like this, more fruity forward, more IPA forward, I will say that no matter what they wanted to do, it works.
It does.
This beer works, and I know that one of the first things that a lot of people say when they have an imperial stout is like, what would it be like in a barrel? I don't want to see this in a barrel.
Leave it alone. Yeah.
I don't want a barrel version of this.
Leave this alone. Absolutely.
You know what I actually love to see in this stuff? I would love to see what happens if they made a version of this and brewed it or lagered it for a bit on candied orange peel.
Yeah. One of the things I think to remember about this that we haven't really mentioned is the USO5 yeast is a classic yeast. And I mean, one of the beers that sticks in my head would be the Huilepan from Brewery. That's the lager that you're going to try. The Skånsk lager is from them. Same yeast, USO5. Cool. And it uses Simcoe and Citrus. Very old school West Coast IPA. And I would say that probably some of the breadiness and smoothness you're getting out of this beer is because of the USO5. And I wouldn't be surprised, just from some of the fruity notes you're getting out of this, I would not be surprised if the USO5 is playing a little bit of a role there as well.
Could be.
I would think so, because I honestly struggle to believe a little bit that Tomahawk alone is responsible for all these fruity flavours.
It can't be.
It can't be, I don't think. So I think it's the USO5 is playing a significant role here on the fruity side of things.
It could be. I will admit that my knowledge of yeasts isn't that big. I will say that the fruity part of this show is not simply, I agree with you, that it's not simply a hop. For me, a lot of the fruitiness here comes from, because I'm a coffee drinker, I love coffee. So I'm not as big as a coffee nut as people I know. I do know that many different coffee beans, depending on the countries they've been grown, the altitudes they've been grown, like you just mentioned earlier, can impart so many intensely berry, plummy, red fruit flavors in the coffee itself, which would be imparted into the beer now. Having said what I'm trying to say with this is, the Tomahawk itself is not doing all of that fruity part of the show. Could be fruity esters from the yeast, or the yeast amplifying what's in the hop and the coffee. But it's quite intense.
Oh, yeah.
For anybody watching this, especially from the Netherlands mostly, of course, because that's where this beer is available. If you have this, drink it now. Don't age it. Don't wait.
Just go for it.
Don't wait thinking like, coffee stouts themselves, always go for it straight away, because that's when they're at the best. And especially since this has such a IPA, black IPA forward character, you don't want to wait longer. Yeah. Drink it now.
Yeah. So very briefly on the mouthfeel then, because Thomas talked about it a little bit earlier. So for me, bottom end of full-bodied, smooth carbonation, quite an oily black IPA, very oily beer this one, which I like, but very slick in that sense. IBUs, I think this has got to be about 60 or 70.
There's a good amount of bitterness in this. Could be from those roasted malts that they're using.
The coffee, and
could definitely be from the coffee, and probably a little bit from that Tomahawk, some bittering.
I would think so.
But this has to be in at least that low 60s, high 50s, low 60s IBU.
Definitely. So it's got all of that kind of going on with it. Malt base for me, it's got a bit of roasty toastiness, particularly in the back third of the palate, but it has a real smoothness to it as well. I think the yeast is playing a role there, along with the coffee, and the fruits for me, lovely and juicy, but at the same time they've got just a little bit of oiliness to them as well. But I think, safe to say, while I would debate that this is an Imperial Coffee Stout, I would more be inclined to call it an Imperial Coffee Black IPA.
Agreed.
It's a beautiful beer, and that's the main thing.
Agreed.
That's it.
And this is definitely one of the finest beers I've had. Well, actually, only this entire weekend has been filled with good beer.
But I think this is probably genuinely, I think we've had some really nice beers. But I think we've had the La Trappe Oak Aged. We've had a really nice IPA. We've had what was the other one we had?
We had that Rhodesian, that barley wine,
the barley
big
wine
bottle. We did the wild, the
wild Staff Hendrick. But I think
the Fierce beer was good.
The Fierce beer was good. This one and the Fierce beer I think have been the highlights so far.
Absolutely.
So yeah, the Fierce beer one will appear on Thomas's channel. The Wildwood one will appear on mine, but I think I'm going to rearrange the videos. I think I want to get this one out there first out of the ones we've recorded.
Especially because there's a good chance that you Dutch viewers will have this beer on standby.
Yeah.
Thinking it's a stout, it can wait. No,
drink it.
Quaff it.
Drink
it hard. Like guzzle the bottle just straight away. Don't even. You know what it's going to taste like.
Harry Meadows chug it.
Yeah, exactly like that. You already know what it's supposed to taste like, so you have the bragging rights from our tasting notes, and you can just go all straight away. Down you got it.
Yep, Harry Meadows chug this one, definitely.
He would.
This would be a really cool one. It'd be, while, I don't know, as I say, I don't like asking breweries to do stuff, but if the brewery did have some extra ones, I think this would be a really cool one to send out to the English guys.
I think they should.
I think if they do have some left, it'd be cool for them to send out the English guys. And I have to say from this one, I would be curious to try another black IPA from them and a stout. I'd love to just see exactly what one of their more regular black IPAs and one of their stouts is like, because this is really like an Imperial Coffee Black IPA.
How about we make sure that the next time, because this is pretty close to Douglas as well, and it's not a long trip for Remy either. We should definitely arrange that when COVID is over and you can have easier travel plans through the country as well. We should definitely spend a day there because they've got good food, they've got great beers.
Nice out and about video.
Yeah,
that could be cool.
I remember from last time we were there was a cute bartender.
Okay, well I think this has been a nice introduction to Rock City, and I certainly want to try a few more of their beers in the future, so that would be cool. But yeah, let's sign off on this one then. So this one was the Koffiebeuker. Koffiebeuker, the coffee rammer, a 10% Imperial Coffee Stout apparently. I think an Imperial Coffee Black IPA, definitely. But a lovely, lovely beer, and it also had this big sexy beast on the side here.
I'm keeping the bottle.
Yeah, Okay, well I'll need to steal one from Remy then, because he's probably got a few. Yeah, so Remy, keep a bottle of this. Keep one of the bottles for me. But lovely, lovely beer this one, and I'm really glad that we could review this. And nice to have Thomas along once again. So yes, guys, let's leave it there. So once again, thank you for watching my reviews. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Rock City. Make sure you check out Thomas's channel and show him some love. Check out my good friend Remy over at Beer Geek Holland, and check out the Dutch Beer Collective, where you'll also find beers with Douglas Hesselmans, and Herman Caspers as well, who is Dutch Beer Geek. So make sure you give all of these guys a follow, like, subscribe, blah blah blah, do all of that. So but guys, thank you for watching. It's been really cool to film another collaboration review. This is the last one for my channel. We've got one more for Thomas's, and
we're gonna make that happen.
Slanger skull.